Hi, Amish.
Hi,
Good to see you.
good to see you too. How are things going?
Well, so far so good. You tell me, you have a new Prime Minister now?
Sorry?
I'm saying you have a new Prime Minister in London now.
Yeah. But I'm on camera, so I'll not say anything.
Okay. So, Amish, thank you for joining us. Dear ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure and privilege to invite you all to this MCCI Leadership Series, Ideas for India at 100. I mean, as we stand at the cusp of the nation's 75 years of independence, it also entrusts us with the responsibility of reflecting on the way forward. What should be our vision for our nation in its centenary years? And we have 25 years to make that vision come true. So we have with us today one of India's foremost authors, Amish Tripathi, with his Shiva trilogy becoming the fastest selling book series in Indian publishing history, and his Ramchandra series being the second fastest. Since 2019, he has been director of the Nehru Centre in London, which is a cultural wing of the Indian High Commission in the United Kingdom. He has been a popular documentary host, a producer, and consistently ranked amongst the 100 most influential celebrities in India by Forbes magazine. So thank you, Amish, for joining us. And of course, it's kind of ironic that someone who writes so much about mythology in the past, here we would request you to do some crystal gazing and help us create an agenda for the next 25 years, India at 100. So thank you, Amish, for joining us today.
Thank you. My pleasure, Rishabh. Absolute pleasure being here. Calcutta is one of my favorite cities. I've studied there, so it's a pleasure to join a program from Kolkata.
Great.
So I'm based in London, joining online.
Yes.
Pleasure to.
Great. So, Amish, opening thoughts on this just concluded Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Of course, we still continue to celebrate it, and where India is where India is today from the last 75 years, and where it is likely to be in the next 25 years.
Rishabh, 75 years is a good time to take stock of all that we've achieved as a young nation and also as a very ancient civilization. As has been rightly said, there are very few countries which can lay claim to being a civilizational state. Nation states are common, and nation states emerged with the treaties of Westphalia in the 17th and 18th centuries. But a civilizational state is, a state which essentially represents a civilization, which is perhaps the greatest agglomeration of human beings, just lower than all humanity. I guess China can lay claim to that. India can lay claim to that. Japan, to some extent, I can't think of many others which can. So if we evaluate where we are as a civilization state, having had independent existence for 75 years, this year our GDP will cross the GDP of the UK, our former colonial master, our former oppressor. The last time our GDP was higher than that of the UK was approximately 150 years ago, perhaps longer than that, so during Queen Victoria's reign. So what we lost in 150 years, we've made up largely only in the last 30 years, because our economic decline continued actually post-independence till the mid-1990s, as Ruchi Sharma's figures show. It's only the economic reforms of 1991, when we stopped our suicidal attachment to socialism, that India's economy started growing. We still have a lot of socialist baggage in our country, but yes, the high point of socialism was perhaps 1970s, and our economy continued to suffer. So it's only post 1991 that our economy started growing once again. The decline of many centuries turned at that time. So this year we've crossed the GDP of the UK. Most economists will tell you over the next 20-25 years, our per capita income on a purchasing power parity basis will cross the per capita income of most Europeans. The last time that happened was approximately 800 to 900 years ago, if you see Angus Madison's figures. So if my long thing, if you have to say in summary, in terms of total GDP, what we lost 150 years ago, we made up just in the last 30 years. And in terms of per capita income on a purchasing power parity basis, what we lost over 900 years ago, we're going to make up just in the next 25. The pace of change is fantastic. The question is, with this increased power and economic heft, what kind of country will we be? And that is the debate we should start having now. What kind of society do we want to be?
So, where do you think our society is heading? I mean, there are, of course, very, very mixed signals. If you see the Western way of looking at India, they're talking about challenges that India faces, their own ideas of democracy, liberalism, whatnot. While today you see a much more confident, much more strengthened, and a much more, agile India, willing to compete against the best the worldwide. Where do you see India in the next 25 years?
Rishabh, firstly, your question on the West itself. I'm living in the West right now.
Yes.
I can tell you that 20-25 years ago, there would have been many things from the West that we would have to learn of what we should do. Today, the way the West is going, perhaps we need to learn lessons from the West of what we should not do. Their societies are almost in internal civil war. There are many problems here. And it's a little unfortunate because it is not going to be good for a far weaker West is not necessarily going to be good for us or good for democracies. So one really hopes that the West can heal its internal divisions and become more organized. But as far as India is concerned, in some ways it's the best of times, some ways the worst of times. There is a lot of a revival of reconnect to our ancient culture, to our ancient way of living, which is very good. In many ways, though, we are losing connections to our ancient roots, which is not good for us. There are particular cultural norms, practices that we have built over centuries, which make sense for us. So for example, if I quote a very simple example of how our cities and architecture is carried forward, you'll notice most of our buildings, including in Calcutta, the modern office buildings are all these glass-walled buildings, which make sense in Western Europe, where there's a shortage of the sun. But in India, where there's an excess of the sun, a glass-walled building makes no sense. It's essentially a giant microwave oven. Many of our architects are mentally so westernized and colonized that they're designing and building structures which make no sense in the Indian climate. Which is why you'll find that our AC bills shoot up in many of these office buildings, because people who have cabins close to the glass walls are being baked by the sun, and then the AC has to be blasted in from the inside. It makes no sense. Our architecture is more geared towards Western Europe than India. Look at the repeated floods that happen in our cities, because again, in our cities, we try so desperately to copy Western methods of organizing cities, which again makes no sense in India. Let me ask you one question, to tell you how our ancients organized their cities and their way of life. What is the Sanskrit word for rain?
Rain.
Yeah, what's a Sanskrit word?
I mean, you are better informed than me on this.
No, it's a word that's in use in Hindi as well today. Varsha.
Yeah,
right?
correct. Yes.
That's a Sanskrit word for rain. Well, what's a Sanskrit word for year?
For
a year.
I mean, we use
Varsh.
Varsh, correct.
What word do you think it's derived from? From Varsha. What's a Sanskrit word for a country?
Bharatvarsh.
Bharatvarsh.
So,
Correct?
yes.
The name for a country is also Varsh.
Correct.
Okay, or Varsham. What is it derived from? Again, from the rain. Our ancestors were very clear. Our entire way of life is built around the rainy season. Our entire way of life is built around the monsoon season. Draw a simile to how Indians receive water to your salary. If I have to draw a simile, imagine if your entire annual salary was given to you in a 2-month period. That's it. And the rest of the 10 months in the year, you receive absolutely nothing. Zero. How should you live your life? Okay. Should you just blow up all that money within those 2 months and then for the rest of the 10 months think, hell, where the hell am I going to get money from? Okay. And make it even more complicated. Say in 1 year, you don't receive your entire annual salary. You receive 200% of your annual salary in those 2 months. But in another year, you receive only 50% of your annual salary. You can't predict what that year is going to be. Again, how should you plan your year? Right? Your entire way of life should be built around those 2 months. That's how our ancestors planned their way of life. Okay, that our entire culture, our architecture, our cities, everything was built around how to manage this bounty that we get in those 2 months to spread it out over those other 10 months where we get nothing. Okay. And they repeatedly reinforced it by using the term Varsha everywhere. How do we plan our cities now? You know, why do our cities keep flooding? Because they're not planned for the monsoon. We are blindly copying Western forms of city organization. We are blindly copying Western forms of architecture. Our ancient things were all about water harvesting from our buildings. All our temples had a pond. Why? It wasn't just so that you could draw water. It was also where the flood waters went. Okay. The way our rivers were used. Our entire way of life was built around managing water. There's a German historian called Gregory Possehl who used this term Wasserlexis to talk about the ancient Indian way of life. It translates as obsession with water. Okay. Management of water was the center of our way of life. What do? You know, we plan our cities in European ways where Europe does not receive all its rain in 2 months. Okay. And therefore, almost it doesn't just happen in Bangalore, it happens in Chennai, Calcutta, Mumbai. Every year it happens like clockwork. And then we curse the rains. But this is how our subcontinent has been for hundreds of thousands of years. The monsoon system is not going to change because we don't know how to plan our cities or how to plan our life. Right? Our entire way of life, why would we not kill during the monsoon season? Why would we not eat meat during the monsoon season? Or just the season just after? Because that's when animals breed. According to our way of life, everything was built around Varsha. Okay, for that, we have to be reconnected to our culture. Whereas mentally, we all want to be living in Europe. Okay, which is why we repeatedly face problems because we are not living in Europe, we are living in India. So that to me, in my mind, is one of the biggest things we need to do over the next 25 years, how to get our educated elite to reconnect to the land that they actually live in.
Do you think that educated elite matters in the larger scheme of things, the way things are? I mean, there is always going to be a minority with, for lack of a better word, fanciful ideas. But don't you see India fundamentally changing and being more assertive? Today, even things like our intangible...
Rishabh, it should be that way. It should be that way. But sadly, it is not. Because the elite has disproportionate influence. Our cities, our cities are actually designed by, by our elite, by architects who are part of the elite, by bureaucracy who are part of the elite. The dams that we build, rather than we should build dams. Yes, it helps at times, but we also need to have those local village water management techniques which are traditional rural people know, right? But we don't allow them to do it because a collector will go in and say this pond now belongs to the government. The local village used to have their own shramdan, where they contribute work to maintain their ponds. They knew because it is part of our thousands of years of traditions. And all those things get overridden because of elite influence. And our elite is so desperately wanting to be Europeanized, right? And not be connected to our own land, to our own climate, okay? That it causes issues for even those who are not from the elite. So how do we, like I said, I drew this example of floods, of managing water, because you see it in real life. Every single city in India, every single city faces a flooding problem every few years. Okay. And it's almost like we get shocked. Arey, monsoon kahan se aa gaya? Yaar, we are India, boss. Monsoon is a part of our way of life. What do you expect? Europe, right? But our cities are designed by those who make decisions. Those who make decisions are the elite. And that impacts how the ordinary people live.
Thank you, Amish. That was very insightful. Now, switching gears, there are two other hats or roles that you play, apart from being the very insightful thinker that you are. The first one is, of course, you're a very, very accomplished and celebrated author. Indian writing and writing by Indian authors has gone through a sea change where today there are Indian authors on the best-selling lists of literature, not only in India but globally, where Indian authors are writing in English. Indian authors are able to reach out to audiences where only earlier European or American authors were. Where do you see Indian writing, both in English as well as in Indian languages, in the next 2 decades, progressing from here?
I think among the most exciting things that one sees in Indian writing right now is we are writing about our own themes, our own culture from our own lens. Whereas, fortunately, the Indian language publishing industry was still very rooted, but the English language industry till around maybe say 15, 20 years ago was more a British industry which just happened to be based in India. So even the way they wrote about India was from a very exotic foreigner looking India kind of looking into India kind of lens. So even the Indians who wrote were westernized, whereas now we write from the inside out. We write from our perspective. And as India becomes a bigger and bigger market, our market itself is so big that it will impact the rest of the world, right? India has more people than all of North America, Western Europe, and Middle East combined. And soon our GDP and our money power is going to make a massive impact as well. So actually, it will be more inside out now, which is good. Of course, we should not. I'm not one of those, reactionaries who say that we shouldn't learn anything from non-Indians. No, that is silly. There is, of course, the famous Anu Badra Sanskrit line that our ancestors said that noble thoughts come to me from all directions. So our way of life is we learn good things from across the world, but we will not do only that. We will teach our own and speak our own point of view as well. And increasingly, many foreigners do want to listen. They want to listen to how Indians think, because our imprint is becoming bigger and bigger.
Of course, I think that's been the hallmark of our culture. I mean, today, there are so many Indian things which have been even, for example, UNESCO's list of intangible cultural heritage has just included, for example, the Durga Puja. We also have Vedic chanting or Manipuri, Sanskritana, or even Lamdira as a part of that tradition, which has been recognized worldwide. But when we talk about Indian writing, how do you see with more people getting, devouring content in other forms? There is more of cinema, there's more visual medium than reading. What do you see is the future when we talk about writing vis-a-vis various media, social media, or other entertainment platforms?
Look, a storyteller is essentially a storyteller, right? And through the medium of his or her stories, they try to convey various philosophies and thoughts. Um, but stories can be communicated through various media, right? I mean, there was a time when you used to have those, calligraphy and painted and handwritten books. Then it moved to the printing press, and then cinema, and now you have web series, which the writing for web series is almost like a novel. Unlike a movie, which is a short 2-3 hour window, web series, you have the gift of time. Your viewers giving you as much time, as a reader gives, to a book. So stories can be communicated through various media, and a storyteller, a good storyteller would probably be platform agnostic as long as the stories are communicated. That's what truly matters, right?
So you think these Indian stories are going to get propagated irrespective of the medium?
I certainly think so. I certainly think so. Part of it is, of course, driven by a very successful Indian diaspora across the world. They themselves generate huge demand because we have large Indian diasporas across the world, including in the West. And in the UK, it's a 1.5, 1.7 million Indian community out here. If you include, Nepalis and Sri Lankans who also follow the same kind of stories that that perhaps that we would write on, then it goes up to some 2.2, 2.3 million. Now, just the Indians in the UK, and to give you a sense of the success of the community, the Indians, are probably the Indian community here, around 1.5% of the population. They contribute 6% of UK's GDP. Similar figures in the US, in Canada, everywhere. Indians are, a successful community, educationally outperformers, economically outperformers, politically becoming increasingly visible, and in many negative parameters like, violent crime or jail time, Indians are actually significantly lower represented. So that's why among the terms that's used for Indians in the West, a term I've heard often is a model minority. Because they don't do violent crime. There are no Indians in those grooming gangs in the UK. They're not disproportionately in jail, but they perform very well educationally. They perform very well economically. They are increasingly visible politically. So it's a community that is seen positively by many people, and therefore it's a matter of time before India's cultural influences starts being seen by others as well. So what Indians find culturally attractive, many others may also start finding culturally attractive, and I see that happening going forward.
Great. So this ties down to my next question to you. You're being a diplomat, you are the director of the Nehru Center, you represent Indian culture, Indian cultural relations over there. How do you see India's diplomatic heft changing from now to the next 25 years? Apart from, of course, the cultural influence that you just spoke about.
It's already changing very rapidly. You'll see that we're the only country which gets along with the US and the UK and France and Germany, but also gets along with Russia and Iran. We're the only country which gets along with Iran on the one side and also with Saudi Arabia and UAE on the other side. So many groups which may not like each other, both tend to like India and have strategic relationships with us. It shows the deftness of the Indian diplomatic corps. I think we have a fantastic foreign service. It's also, of course, aided by the fact that India has much more economic heft now, much more military heft now. We are a far more powerful country, and our growth rates are such that we'll continue to increase in our heft. India has also shown that we may be a power, but we are a much more responsible power. I don't want to take names of countries, but you do know that there were many countries which had excess vaccines, but they did not send them to poorer countries in Africa. And in fact, many of those vaccines expired, you know that.
Yes.
And these are wealthy countries. Whereas India, through its vaccine Maitri, helped nearly 200 countries. Poorer countries, countries that were facing severe stress during COVID. On a per capita basis, India's COVID deaths are among the lowest. We have done, over 2 billion vaccinations. Much of, recent research shows that the COVID vaccines that we made did not have the side effects that some of the other vaccines being produced in that were produced in other countries. There is evidence emerging that they may have had side effects, including on the heart. But Indian vaccines have not had those side effects. So, just in the area of health, India has shown that of course we have power, but we are also a decent dharmic power, which is willing to help other countries.
I mean, when we talk about the future, you've written a book called Immortal India, where, if you look at it on a whole, where do you see India, not in these areas, but overall as a leading nation of the world? If you were to do some crystal gazing, what would it be? What would the crystal ball tell you of India in 2047?
I would see primarily three things. One, at least the glide path at this point in time shows that India will probably be among the top 3 economies, maybe within the next 5 to 10 years, top 3 economies in the world. We're already the 5th largest, which is a massive move. Just in 2010, I think we were the 11th largest, right? 11th or 12th largest, thereabouts. And so it's been a very significant growth. But we need to keep growing. And which brings me to the first point. Among the things that we have a lot of strengths, we Indians, but among the weaknesses that we have is a sense of complacency. We like to declare victory very early. And we think, abhi to apna hak hai, abhi to hum log aage badhte rahenge. Aisa kuch nahi. Or we have to continue working hard. The world doesn't owe us great status or superpowerdom or economic growth. We have to earn it for ourselves. So that's the first point. We have to continue working hard. We work as a nation. We worked very hard over the last 30 years. We need to continue with that. That's the first point. Second point, among the things that troubles me at times is that lack of unity among us Indians. And this is again a trait we've shown repeatedly in the past. That foreigners didn't have to defeat us, we defeated ourselves. Because of a lack of unity. And we start fighting with each other on petty issues, on religion, on language, on community, on caste, on petty issues, we start fighting each other. And we lose out moments of history where we could have made it. And this is one such moment in history. Let us not give in to internal divisions and lose out this moment of history. We need to stay united so that we can achieve all that we are capable of achieving. And the third thing I'd like to say is that what kind of superpower will we be? Will we be the kind of superpower that the British Empire was, that was venal, corrupt, oppressive, killed tens of millions of Indians in man-made famines that they engineered, the last of which was in 1942 in Bengal, where Winston Churchill ordered a famine which killed between 3 to 4 million of our fellow Indians. It's wiped out of our history books. It's surprising how many Bengalis also don't know about this. But Winston Churchill ordered it. It's surprising how many Indians think well of Winston Churchill. I can understand the British thinking well of Winston Churchill. Fair enough, he was their hero. But for us Indians, he was worse than Hitler. Hitler didn't kill any Indians. Winston Churchill ordered a famine which killed between 3 to 4 of us, 3 to 4 million of our fellow Indians. So we should not be a superpower like that. We should be a decent superpower. which will of course take care of itself, which will defend its interests, which will be strong where we need to be strong. But we should be decent and dharmic and helpful to others in need, as we were during the COVID pandemic, where we helped many others with vaccines and medical supplies. I would hope that we continue to be a country like that, a strong nation, but a decent nation.
Amish, you mentioned about unity and also the challenges. While we all want to see a great India, what are the top 3 biggest challenges you think we may face, and what would be your prescription, whether as individuals, as a community, as government, as a nation, to overcome those challenges? I mean, in a very practical way for the next 25 years, if we are to achieve the greatness we are destined to have.
Among the things that's happening, which is good, is massive growth in our private sector. There is still regrettably some remnants of our socialist attitudes today, where capitalists are seen as negative. That if someone makes tons of money, there are campaigns run, oh, he's made so much money. Like, unless that chap has done it through corruption or stealing, fair enough. But if that businessman or businesswoman has made it through hard work and innovation, then what's the problem? Because only when capitalists earn good money for India will India become wealthy. And and if we hate Indian businessmen, then what? We want American and British businessmen to dominate us. I mean, isn't it better to have an Indian rich capitalist than an American rich capitalist dominating us? You think he or an American capitalist will care 2 hoots about India? The Indian businessman will at least, or businesswoman will at least do charity work here, will be living here, will be doing something out here, right? So one, we must celebrate our capitalists, our businessmen. We must, encourage as much as we can. We must improve state capacity so that we can take care of our poor as well. So I'm not a fan of swinging to any extreme, where we demonize all our capitalists. That's stupid. But we swing completely, like it has regrettably happened in some Western countries, where it's almost heartless capitalism. No, that's not good either. We need to take care of our poor. We need an efficient welfare system. We need state capacity to do that. In many ways, things have improved over the last few years. We need to strengthen that further. We will face external challenges. We do know a certain northern country which has invaded us, which we fought a war with. There is a certain Western country whose state capacity is a lot weaker now. But we know their intentions haven't changed. Once their state capacity improves, they will be back attacking us. So we must expect this 2-front war and prepare ourselves for that. And lastly, I'd repeat once again, internal divisions. Any conversation which divides India is something that is dangerous for us. We should, and I'm not saying we shouldn't discuss our problems openly. Of course we should. India is not a perfect country, but I've traveled to many other countries. India is among the better countries there is. I genuinely believe, right? And whatever our internal divisions are, let's find conversations of unity which can heal those wounds rather than fracture them and cause more divisions. Because if the ship sinks, all of us will sink with it. Right. We have to have that very clear in our mind. You've seen in the past where there were kings who thought it would be a good idea to invite a foreign invader to fight their fellow Indian competitor. And we all know what happened to us repeatedly because of that in the last 1,000 years. Our entire ship sunk because of that. So let's be clear that whatever our differences, we always have to pick a fellow Indian against a foreigner.
Well, that's a wonderful thought, Amish. Thanks a lot for sharing that. Shifting gears, tell us more about what's happening with you now. War of Lanka is, I believe, around the corner. So tell us more about
It'll launch by October 3rd. War of Lanka. This is the cover. For those who don't know, there's no such thing as too much marketing. This is the War of Lanka cover. It's open for pre-orders. It's the fourth book of the Ramchandra series. The first 3 are Ram Sign of Vishwaku, Sita Warrior of Mithila, and Ravan Enemy of Aryavarta. These 3 books are available already. War of Lanka is open for pre-orders. You can check it out at bookstores in Calcutta and all around West Bengal, and of course all online stores as well. And I'll be visiting Calcutta for my book tour. The book will launch on October 3rd. I'll be visiting Calcutta sometime during October, and look forward to seeing all you guys at book events.
Great, Amish. Thanks a lot. And the last question is, when we talk about India, where do we see Amish in 2047? How many more books? How many more accomplishments? What new hats to don? What does the crystal ball tell you?
I did my MBA in IIM Calcutta, right? Yeah. 95 to 97. And, in our placement interviews, among the things we had to learn and answer to is, where do you see yourself 10 years from now? And all of us had to have this, what would sound like a nice, good, sexy plan. I'm 47 years old now. I've lived long enough to know that those plans mean bullshit, actually. Life is what happens to you while you're planning other things.
Correct.
There is no way I would have planned, 20 years ago that I would become a full-time author. Or that I would even write books and that they would be well received. I wouldn't have ever planned, right? But it happened. 6 years ago, I would have never planned or thought that I would be a diplomat and I would work in the government service. I would have never planned that. I would have never thought that, but it happened, and here I am. 3 years ago, I would have never planned that I would have been a host for a documentary series, which I did for Discovery TV, Legends of the Ramayana, and they told me it was one of the biggest hits ever of their India-produced programs. And now it's a new thing that's opened, and I'm doing more hosting for documentary series. So I never thought I would have planned that. So basically, how I'm going to answer your question is, I would like to just enjoy the ride. I don't know where my journey is going to go. It's all up to Lord Shiva. But whatever happens, I'm going to try my best to enjoy the ride.
That's wonderful, and more power to you. Thank you very much, Amish, for joining us. Maybe we can take a couple of questions. We have with us, can we have Arun Garodia ji on the screen? Arun ji, would you like to ask a question?
Thank you, Rishabh-ji. The talk has been really very impressive, and the way he speaks and he has shared his views and thoughts and everything. I think Amish is going to do very well in the future, and that is what is really required in our country. We should not shy away from capitalists and things like that. And we have to really see what problems we have in our country and what our ancient ways were there. We have to save our life and develop like that. I do not have any questions on this, but I'm really appreciative of the talk that he has given. Thank you so much, Rishabh-ji.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Arunji. Thank you.
There is Saket Agarwal here. I think he's pinged me that he would like to ask a question. Saket, your question, please.
Hi, Amish. Great talk. Excellent. Yours was the first book that I won. Okay, so yours was the first book that I.
Hello. Sorry, I can't hear you, Saket. I think you're on mute.
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah. Hi.
Great to see you. And yours was the first book that I read. Okay, so what brought me back? What didn't bring me? It was the first book I ever read. And so was my son at the age of 12 when, he met you at Story and he asked you a question. Quick question. You spoke about the ways, how we should imbibe our culture. So how do we, I have seen very few writings on business cultures historically followed by Indians and how we can put that into our management systems. I've seen in my experience in the last 20 years, I've seen many companies following Indian style of management, being soft, being inclusive, having that culture thing in the organization. And then I have seen that professional way, the way, you see in how organizations go. How can India start on a path where in the next 15, 20 years, we are teaching the world that, this is the right way to run your business?
Saket, very good question. And, my problem is I have more ideas than the capacity to write, because one of the ideas I wanted to take up, and hopefully I'll get down to it sometime, is the concept of dharmic capitalism. How India's approach to capitalism is actually quite different. And you see that almost intuitively. There's this narrative that is put in, in regrettably slightly clueless newspapers like New York Times and Guardian, etc. Oh, Indians don't do charity. In fact, actually, Indians are among the most charitable people. We have far more NGOs than others. There's a reason why India, despite inequality and so much poverty, does not face that much violent revolution as compared to others, because a lot of private sector guys actually go and do quite charity. But in our traditional way, you're not supposed to speak about it. Unlike in the West, where they declare their charity, there'll be a photograph with, with those big checks. In the Indian way, you lose dharmic punya if you do that. You're supposed to do it quietly. Our philosophies used to be of the four purusharthas, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. That you have to follow dharma, which doesn't translate into religion. Actually, dharma is it's an erroneous translation. Dharma is that which holds the society, universe together. It's the right way to live. It's what is balanced. Then artha is wealth, power, everything, the entire package. Kama is all the pleasures of life, music, dance, eroticism, everything, right? And fourth is moksha, which is liberation from the cycle of rebirths. And our ancestors told us that we must have all four to lead a fulfilling life. So which is what the dharmic capitalists are supposed to do. If you are earning artha without dharma, then that's not good, right? If you're doing artha without contributing to the arts, without contributing to the rasa of life, that's not good either. So there has to be balance in all four. Now, these are philosophies that come intuitively to our way of life, but most business discussions are so westernized that we don't think it as well as we should. So like in the West, for example, it's this winner take all philosophy. So a CEO, he thinks it's his right to take hundreds of millions of dollars, even if he's firing half the company. Which is just artha without dharma. In the proper dharmic capitalism way, no, that's wrong, right? The pain has to be shared across, and the person at the top must take a greater share of the pain, right? That is our way of life, which is what leads to a more balanced society. If like I said, one shouldn't swing to the other extreme of socialism, because that's a disaster. But if one, and it has an unparalleled record of bankruptcy and chaos wherever socialism, communism, Marxism, what do you want to call it, wherever it has been tried, it has caused complete disaster. But you can't swing to the other extreme of heartless capitalism that one sees in some of the Western countries. We need dharmic capitalism. And yes, we need to have literature on this which conveys these philosophies across.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I hope to see you in Calcutta.
Hope to see you.
Thank you, Amish. This was really very, very interesting as well as exciting. And of course, you've given us even more exciting news that you're going to be in Calcutta soon. We all look forward to meeting you in person. And of course, grabbing a copy of this fantastic book. I have read the other 3 books, and the way you've written it, it's all like a cliffhanger, because all of them end up in one point. So everybody it is almost like who killed Katappa. So we're all eagerly waiting for this book. And for those who have not already pre-booked it, please do pre-book your copies. But before that, do put your hands on the other 3 editions, because this is a whole tale which would be incomplete without you having every element of this story. Of course, Ramayana is a story we all know, but the way Amish has written it, it's fantastic. It's really interesting. And I'm absolutely certain that even scholars will find some nuggets which they did not know about from these books. So thank you, Amish. We're really grateful to you for your time, and wishing you all the best in all your endeavors. As you put it, taking life as it comes. But we all do hope that both India and Amish will be rocking in 2047. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It was wonderful. And we hope that you all enjoyed the conversation as much as we did in bringing this to you. Thank you very much.